Eternity by Alfred Lindelof. Chapter 2. 1 hour later. Adam? Holding open the apartment door was my rather scrawny roommate, Gary. Gary's green eyes scanned from my face to my feet. Jesus Christ, what the hell happened to you? Is that blood? He became fixated on my shirt. Don't worry, it's mine. That was meant to be a calming notion. It made him panic instead. Oh, fuck! Holy shit, are you okay? His already clammy hands reached up to grab fistfuls of wavy brown hair. It took a slow second, but he came to realize that I wasn't in pain or bleeding. His anxiety levels dropped noticeably. Should we go to the fucking hospital, or... Let me be honest here. I was sort of comforted by the thought that my new roommate actually cared that much about me. Of course, now I realize he was just in shock. Seeing that much blood will do things to you. Trust me. No, I'm okay. Really. I took a deep breath and I placed my left hand into my crusty, sticky pants pocket while I walked past him into our apartment. I pressed my back against the living room wall and just stared at the ground for what seemed like hours. When the corner of my eye finally noticed that Gary was still staring at me, I figured I had to say something. Dude, I know you're confused, and I would love to be able to explain. I motioned my right hand over my clothes. All of this. But I really don't think I understand it myself. I should be dead. My gaze shifted up to meet with his. I remember dying. I died. The memory made my eyes water, so I tried to block it out, but couldn't. How do you forget the first moment you die? A notion which haunted me back then and still does to this very second. Since forgetting my past was impossible, I figured the best thing I could do was just tell him what happened. I needed someone else's opinion. I needed to hear it out loud, and more importantly, I needed to get it all out. I was wrong. I should have just bottled it all up and made an excuse for the shirt. Either way, the next 20 minutes were spent explaining my night. All of my night, even the crazy-sounding part where I died and a plea to God brought me back to life. He was battered with every detail that I could remember. The mugging, the pain, the overwhelming darkness, followed by the pure, encompassing light. Each word pushed the next word out. I couldn't stop talking. Sentences poured out of my mouth in large globs that probably didn't make any sense to him at all. A river of rambling, one could say, ravaging his ear canal. It was weird, I admit it. Gary just stared at me the whole time, too. The whole damn time. At one point, I couldn't tell if he believed me or not, and I'm not sure if I cared. What I could tell, however, was that he was trying, at least a little, to understand what I was saying, to soak everything in, his own attempt to make some sense of the crazy coming from me. He didn't talk once while I recapped my night, not one word until I fell silent. So it's a fucking miracle then, he stated after the first pause of the evening. Gary wasn't the Pope. I'm not sure he was even Christian. What I do know, though, is that he cursed like a sailor, drank until he blacked out, and partied with the local sorority sisters almost every weekend. They came to know him as the Hermit since he'd never actually attended any colleges in his life. My background checks are pretty thorough. Religious preferences excluded. Also, in a stark contrast to his daily life choices, he managed to uphold a yearly attendance to any Christmas Eve's midnight mass sermon at whichever Catholic church he could find. Truth be told, this was more of a tribute to his childhood traditions than his actual faith. Oh, and we're gonna have to change the fucking locks, he added. You know, since they got your wallet and keys, dumbass. An obvious afterthought which pushed a smirk on my face. Well, I joked. Honestly, I have nothing to worry about. God is on my side now. I chuckled momentarily, but you could watch that smirk melt right off my face. Gary certainly noticed. Yeah, well, I'm no Moses. I don't think God likes me as much as you. He was trying to get me to smile again. He may just take a shit on me instead. It wasn't working. If anything, he made me think about it more. I don't know, man. I really don't feel special either. I really didn't feel anything. Taking a deep breath, I kind of just want to take a shower. Is that okay? Can we talk more after that? I didn't wait for an answer before heading to the bathroom. Door closed, lock latched. My clothes hit the floor. I didn't want them on me anymore. They were stained with the memories that I was running from. They needed to be burned. A deep breath as I bent down to turn the faucet for the shower. The initial ice water pouring from the fiberglass fountain kept me out of the tub, so of course without hesitation mine eye caught a glimpse of the bathroom mirror, and while I did my best to ignore the image, I couldn't unsee the crimson-brown shadow cast across my torso. I looked down. There it was, blinding as the day and spread like shit all over my gut. A coating of crusted coagulation tattooed my entire stomach and side. I worked up the courage to examine the spot for the first real time since the mugging. I expected to feel a scar underneath the blood, maybe even an indentation of sorts where my flesh healed back together. But there were no marks at all. Nothing to indicate that a blade ever pierced my skin, especially not 3 times. It didn't even ache. Weird, I thought as my fingernails began a series of scratches and scrapes at the scabs around the spot. Slowly at first, but then for no discernible reason, I needed all of them off of me. Immediately. I couldn't wait for the water. A process began to emerge, and it went a little bit like this. A smear to move the blood away. A scratch at the scab underneath. A scrape to pick it off of me. Then a toss into the garbage can. Every little ribbon of red ripped away from my flesh like this was a memory. A memory which I didn't want. Who needs memories anyway? My death was excitedly thrown away with the pieces. I smiled. What bliss it is to peel away my memories about the day. So I continued on. Smear. Scratch. Scrape. Toss. 10 minutes it must have taken to pick away the browning blood. Each cracked piece peeled like dead skin after a bad sunburn. Even more freckle-sized tidbits flaked off with the brushing of my hand. I took a lot of pleasure in watching them flutter to the floor. They were flecks of my death, and I wanted to get rid of them. So I continued on. Smear, scratch, scrape, toss, smear, scratch, scrape, toss. Next to the toilet, the small white trash bag became soiled, brown, as my paper-thin blood peelings plastered the inner plastic liner. Last week's flu tissues didn't stand a chance either. I may have missed some shots. The poor floor around the bin, it was becoming ugly. So I continued on. Smear, scratch, scrape, toss, smear, scratch, scrape, toss, smear, scratch, scrape, toss. At some point, I grabbed a fresh container of sanitizer wipes. Smear, scratch, scrape, toss, smear, scratch, scrape, toss, smear, scratch, scrape, toss. The sound of water sloshing into itself seemed to suddenly grow louder as I drew the last sanitizer wipe from the tube. Oh yeah, popped out of my mouth with a little breath before placing my hand into the small-scale waterfall to check the temperature. It was perfect. For some reason, I turned back toward the mirror before actually getting in. My face scrunched. I looked down. A large circle on my chest was completely clean, well, more or less. The circle seemed to center around the spot. I remember trying to remember how long I'd been wiping it. I couldn't. The trash was filled with near white wipes, too. I guess the rest can come off in the shower. Then I noticed the counter and the floor. These were not clean anymore. These needed to be cleaned immediately. A second box of Sani wipes helped me clean my sink. I wiped and wiped and wiped and wiped until there was no pink. I grabbed a broom and dusted all my flakes into the trash. The next day I would burn it down to cinders and ash. My clothes, my wipes, my garbage bags. Everything cringeworthy was well sealed. A bag tied in a bag tied in a bag. Each item individually wrapped several times to ensure nothing would leak out. Then I placed the bags on the ground, right outside the bathroom door. I'll get to them later. God knows who I was talking to. Gazing around the brilliant bathroom and basking in its renewed cleanliness, then looking at myself, I couldn't help but feeling out of place. White tiles reflected the most inviting light through the mist. No red, no pink, no memories. Just purifying, clean water. Unlike myself whom was tarnished. The shower was beautiful. I was unclean. The shower was pure. I was dirty. I needed a shower, and I dare say the shower needed me equally as much, a yin to my yang in a way. So I closed my eyes. Then I opened my eyes. I was standing in the water. How I got there, I've never figured out. A breath of misty air and a blast of hot water is enough to make you forget eternity. You can forget the freezing darkness and all the sorrow a day can bring. You can even forget your death. For a moment, that is. Droplets dripped down my cheeks and chest while I washed away the blood. My blood. My blood which flowed forth in a little red river, away from my feet on a short journey to the drain. Towards the many maelstrom it would go, sucked with a slurp, then dragged into an abyss unseen. Swirling reds and pinks pulled me into a trance as the water dove over my body and plunged back into the piping. I felt like a robot. Soap was being spread all over my body, but my arms were moving by themselves. My hands washed my head. My hands washed my abdomen. My hands washed my legs. Until there was no hint of pink in any sud, my eyes never left the drain. I needed to make sure the blood was gone. When only white soapy water formed around my toes, I placed the plug into position and relaxed on the floor for a bath. For 1 hour I stayed there, breathing in the moistened air, butt and body sprawled out bare, imagining eternity. I was dazed, confused. I was dreamy even. But more than anything, I was alive. How long that would remain the truth I didn't know, and I didn't care. The future, like my reflection in the water, was a distorted wave of possibility. I could watch it ripple as I moved through the endless sea of potential that laid before me, but the truest idea of eternity slipped through the grooves of my mind. I couldn't see past my near greedy future. What would I do with this second chance? Would I repeat the same mistakes I've made before, or maybe start something new? Then again, is it really eternity? Oh, the countless shares of stock I would own, the businesses that I would build and watch crumble through the centuries. Maybe one day I'd become the leader of a country. Maybe one day I'd rule the world. I was drowning in an ocean of blissful daydreams when an inquiry smacked me in the face. A terrible inquiry, a dreadful inquiry, one that makes you ponder your purpose in life. Why me? In the middle of being left alone to contemplate my own existence, an admittedly cliché grouping of questions started moving through my head. Why would you save me? And what is my purpose? Were among the most prevalent, but several others popped in and out while I mulled it all over. I figured obviously I had a purpose. I had to have a purpose. There was a reason that I was saved. God chose me. I must somehow end up saving humanity. Or something. But how? For some reason, these questions provoked my memories. The bad memories. The recent blinding pain was suddenly all I could think about. I remembered the attack so vividly now that it felt like it was happening fresh as I sat there in the tub. I winced. Imagine cutting your hand on a kitchen knife. Even though the wound is healed, the memory of it still makes you hurt. For me, that pain was the ache of death. Horror movies made of my memories started playing in my mind over and over. Still frame flashes of each separate moment where I felt the blade enter my skin. I could feel the tear of my muscles where the mugger plunged his knife into my abdomen, an action I was too drunk to stop. Millimeter by millimeter, it tore through every layer of flesh and bone, easily finding its way 3 times into my chest and stomach. I embraced myself and shut my eyes hard, hoping it would go away. It didn't. Instead, the pain guided me into the night. Blackness surrounded me and frightened me. It was only a momentary darkness, but it was enough to remember that time, and I did remember it. How do you even forget? It was that same freezing, all too familiar, all-encompassing darkness from a knock on the door. "Hey, Adam, are you okay in there?" Gary asked through the crack. "It's been a few fucking hours now, and, well, you haven't really made a sound or anything, so I'm getting kind of worried out here." My eyes snapped open. The water was freezing cold now, but I didn't even notice until I started to move. A few hours? I thought. How long were my eyes closed? It was a weird night, so I tried not to put too much thought into that question. "Yeah, I called out while starting to stand. I mean, yeah, sorry, yeah, I'm on my way out there now. I took a deep breath, quite possibly the deepest breath in my life. The air felt weird in my lungs. Cold. Why did the air feel so cold? Then another question creeped across my neural activity. Was I breathing? Okay, that was chapter 2. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe and all that other stuff they ask you to do all the time. Oh, and comment? Yeah, comment.